I came here in '71. I hadn't finished my dissertation, barely 27 years old, and I came into a world in which there was no public role for teaching at all, none. There was no support. You just did it, and you didn't talk about it, and it wasn't rewarded, and it wasn't part of the administration's vision or most faculty vision. This was a research institution. I think, in fact, looking at little bit of research I did, teaching had less of a role than it had 10 years earlier, when the university was still continuing in a very different kind of tradition. When I came, there was absolutely no discussion that I can remember about teaching. It was implicitly discouraged. It was not something you talked about in public, because you'd generally be talking about something that wasn't working. And this is long before the Randy Bass's seminal article in which he said, the basic problem is that in research, having a problem is a great thing. It's where you start. In teaching, it's something you keep as a secret, because it means something didn't work and you're at fault, or the students are at fault. Sometime in the early 70s, 72, 73, an associate dean in the College of Arts and Sciences announced that he was going to sponsor a series of tables at lunches where we would talk about teaching if you wanted to. So groups of people came together. For what was supposed to be a month, our group continued for a year or so. But I was very fortunate in being with several people who were extremely influential on me and on the development of SotL. And this is really the story of forming social groups. There was that shift that occurred in a lot of people's minds, that all of a sudden teaching became an intellectual problem. And the external literature helped, but I think most of it was coming from personal contacts, of people beginning to talk about things. And then somebody would say, well, I read this book, I read this article, or there'd be a teaching center presentation, which had been going on actively since the 80s. The teaching center was around before that, but I don't remember them being that much, at least in my life. But you would go to a session and get some new idea. But what was really important was the discussions among people here. So that became more common. And that, I think, laid the foundation. Bassett sponsored a program in the summer of 1996 where each campus was supposed to send a team. I was very concerned about setting up a program or some process for really defining what students needed to be able to do in order to succeed in courses. So that's one thing that's happening, which is increasing interest in teaching. We discovered this word in the late 1990s, scholarship for teaching and learning. Some of us had already been doing it, but now we had a name for it, and we had an international movement behind this. So that was what was happening here, but all those connections that had been formed provided the basis for something happening here. Well, and the first thing is I got involved in SotL without knowing that I was doing it, in part because the word hadn't been existing. It wasn't in existence. I think, like most teachers, I got to the limit of my natural skills. I've always found teaching, particularly small classes, congenial. Without training, I think I found it fairly natural. I was never a great lecturer, but I did okay. Discussion, I think I was good. But I began to encounter the limits. There was things my students weren't learning. And so I turned to someone else who was teaching the same course, Jim Deal, and he was having the same problem, so I began talking about them. That was an important step. And then I got in touch through Tom Swin with the idea of learning from other people about this and the fact that there could be a theory. So that fascinated me, but it was coming from a sense of not being able to achieve some of the things that I wanted to do in the classroom. But then the sense of community was also very important to me, because I found my tribe when I got to the Carnegie program. Wow, these people, it was like when I went from high school to college. It was like, wow, these are my people. I relate to that. And the same on campus, that when there was a strong community of people, I think I got drawn into the work in part because there were other people I wanted to be around. I wanted to share, and it was exciting to be building something. I think there also was a strong sense of connection for me of civic responsibility in teaching, that I feel so strongly that teaching is a political act in the broadest sense of politics, that the inequality is reinforced by bad teaching, and that we don't talk about that enough. I'm screaming that from the rooftops right now. But that we have responsibilities for the maintenance of democracy, for the future of our students' lives. College education is no longer a luxury for a few people. It's the passport that you need to get into a country of success. And SotL is tied up with all that. So for me, those were all motivations. And I know for some of the other people, each of those things were also, I think, factors that Craig a long time ago was talking about. Teaching is a social justice issue 30 years ago. And that was very important to me to hear that. So I think those are the things that drew me in. Oh, also, it's a fascinating intellectual question. I mean, the things that come up to think about are so interesting. I mean, I find history fascinating, but the intellectual challenge and the excitement of doing this is greater, plus the consequences seem to be more important. So that's why I got drawn to it. Something has happened which may be unfortunate, which is teaching has been connected with publication about teaching. And I think there's a separation. I prefer that SotL be seen as research rather than as teaching. That's not been the case, I think, in general. But it does provide people with a way of representing what they're doing in the classroom in a fashion that is more easily judged by the system. If you write an article and it's peer reviewed and the people on your committee have to read the article, then the teaching counts in a way it didn't when you said, I tried something my class knew, and that didn't count at all. So I think that it is counting some more in many departments in the personnel kind of decisions, tenure, hiring, tenure, promotion, salary, but a lot more needs to be done there. The last SotL meetings had so many applicants that they had to turn away a large number of decent proposals. So internationally, it's developed at places where we didn't have connections before, like Germany, are beginning to develop strong SotL communities in the world. So integrating those two communities into the larger whole, I think developing the disciplinary aspect of this is an important thing. We're trying to continue in history. We've maintained our society sort of by the skin of our teeth in some ways, but there's a lot of interest in the American Historical Association, a lot of connections with them, and I think that is a direction that SotL could take nationally and internationally, and that the IU Bloomington campus could plug into that effectively.